My name is Cara Tierney. I use they, them pronouns. I'm an artist, an educator, and I live on unceded Algonquin land in the so-called Ottawa area. My practice developed kind of haphazardly. I did an undergrad, and towards the end of that realized I had no realistic understanding of how I was going to turn art making into a sustainable life. Practicing art it gave me a way to challenge a lot of those spaces of friction, and find new languages and new words and new shapes and forms that better fit my inner desires. I absolutely consider myself an artist first. And I juggle multiple roles, right? So I teach, I do a lot of consultation, which is something that I never anticipated. I do, it's social work, ultimately. The work I do explores issues around identity that are specific to gender nonconformity. And I do so by looking at language, by looking at desire, and by looking at the interrelationships that keep those spaces of possibility and potential. The clearest creation tale for this sculpture starts with a necklace. And I was about to start a new program in a space full of people who didn't know me, and I knew I would be having to introduce my pronoun over and over again, which isn't a problem. However, I wanted to facilitate that process and make it as smooth as possible. So I carved a they out of wood, put it on a necklace, and wore it. And that not only meant that I didn't necessarily have to do all the work of introducing myself, but it also created a visual for everyone in my environment to embark on this learning process with me. And all of a sudden I'd be stopped in the street and people would be like, "Oh, I'm a they." And people started really responding and reaching out to me because of this visual bat signal that I was wearing ultimately. And so I started making more of them just to give to other people, strangers even, who would respond to this necklace, and then we would connect and bond over this sort of concretization of a word, because it's a word that not everybody quickly jumps on board with or immediately understands. It can feel tiresome to have to constantly sort of promote and do that educational work alongside of wearing and being non-binary. So having these small pieces to distribute was a real fast and solid affirmation that I was able to give to other non-binary people who I'd encounter, either intentionally or unintentionally. And then when it was presented to me the opportunity to come and do this piece, I really was given a blank slate by the Ottawa Art Gallery, which is an incredibly beautiful and wonderful privilege to be gifted. This one word has been so monumental in its impact for me. Trying to imagine what a 15-year-old Cara would have felt like entering into a space like this and encountering a word on that scale and with its its history and its meaning right now. I have this dream vision of a youth and a parent standing in front of the piece, and that non-binary youth all of a sudden becoming the educator and helping facilitate learning for the adult who maybe hadn't encountered that language yet. It's frustrating to see headlines that decry the pronoun when on the ground the monumental impact and work that this pronoun is doing in terms of liberating individuals and allowing them more profound understanding of who they are. And so, we actually decided very quickly we're just going to put a giant they on that wall. And what I go back to always is the relationships that made this possible, and the individuals who came to me and knew the kind of work that I did, and just were willing to go along with, let's just put a giant they on the wall. Diamond-plated aluminum is designed specifically to create traction, but also to create movement. So traction, if it's a floor, right? to step on, to not slip on, but it also allows for very hard, heavy objects to slide across it smoothly. And the word does that as well, right? So the word, it allows us that traction to facilitate movement for non-binary identities, and that same thing, that massive movement and momentum that you can gather across that diamond-plated steel. To me, it is that massive momentum and movement that we have now in the trans community for understanding the way bodies are not binary structures and cannot easily be slotted into two categories, and genders neither. For this work to be here in Ottawa is incredibly meaningful for me. As an artist, I feel like a lot of the messaging I have received about what being a successful artist has to do with, international exposure, exhibiting all around the world, traveling to this gallery and that gallery. And I very intentionally have taken an opposite approach in my practice and have remained very rooted and very local. And for me, part of that had to do with being a queer person and wanting to build a solid foundation in one place. But it also just had to do with being able to create a strong, vibrant, accessible, tangible trans culture here in a singular place. So for it to be here in this gallery is monumental, not to mention the fact also that when this gallery was being built, I was invited to come and consult and talk about bathrooms, talk about accessibility with regards to multiple genders. So this is its home. This is really where I feel, it lives. This is where it was designed for that space. So as eager as I am to see it travel and do all kinds of interesting work, because that's what art does, it works, it's very meaningful for me for it to come and be here on its off days. As an artist and as a trans person, and I think actually I'd probably flip that and say as a trans person and then as an artist, what I hope that this work does is really facilitate conversation and help raise awareness. And invite people into considering what it means for us to cut loose from a gender binary. And I don't just mean non-binary people and trans people, I mean all of us.